I jolted awake at 6 a.m. drenched in sweat. My shirt clung to me like a second skin, sticky and damp. The first thing that struck me was the silence. No comforting hum of the air conditioner, no reassuring buzz from the refrigerator, just an unsettling, oppressive stillness. I turned my head toward Emma's room. My 8-year-old daughter was already stirring, tangled in her sheets, her face flushed with the heat. She whimpered softly, murmuring something about how hot it was. I threw back the covers and swung my feet to the floor, bracing for what I knew I'd find. A glance at the thermometer on the porch confirmed my dread. 92 degrees, and it wasn't even 7 yet. The weatherman had been warning all week about record-breaking heat, promising highs of 105. I stumbled toward the electrical panel, hoping, praying, it was just a tripped breaker. But every switch was where it should be. My phone still had full bars. At least the cell towers were working. With a rising sense of unease, I called the power company's automated line, punching in my account number with clammy fingers. The cheery, soulless voice on the other end informed me there were no reported outages in my area. My bill was current. No issues on their end. My stomach churned. If it wasn't a neighborhood blackout and I'd paid my bill, why was my house the only one in darkness? My mind raced as I threw on some clothes and stepped outside. The heat slammed into me like a wall, nearly taking my breath away. Across the street, Mrs. Henderson's sprinkler system was spraying a perfect arc of water onto her roses. Her house hummed contentedly with the sound of her AC, and her porch lights glowed faintly. The Johnsons' house was alive with its usual morning buzz. Everyone had power. Everyone except me. I'd moved into Willow Creek Estates 3 years ago, after the divorce, desperate for a fresh start and a safe place to raise Emma. It was one of those planned communities, where every house looked like it had been churned out of the same cookie cutter, and the HOA rules were thicker than a college textbook. The fees were steep, but I figured they were worth it for the peace of mind, the safe streets, the decent schools. I'd always paid my dues, followed the rules, and kept to myself. Or so I thought. But lately, I'd started getting letters from the HOA about my electricity usage. Karen Mitchell, our self-appointed queen of the neighborhood, had decided that we all needed to do our part to conserve energy during peak summer months. She'd sent out these smarmy little notices, suggesting we set our thermostats to 78 degrees or higher to help maintain grid stability. I'd rolled my eyes at every single one. My electricity bill was my business. I paid it on time every month. What I did with my thermostat was my call. Karen Mitchell was exactly the kind of person you'd imagine as the president of a suburban HOA. Mid-50s, platinum blonde hair sprayed into a helmet, and a white SUV plastered with bumper stickers about property values. She strutted through the neighborhood like a queen, measuring grass height with a ruler and doling out violation notices like candy. She'd come after me once for leaving my garbage cans visible for an hour too long, and once for Emma's sidewalk chalk being too bright and distracting. But the energy thing had taken a dark turn. 2 weeks ago, she'd knocked on my door, clipboard in hand, fake smile plastered on her face. She'd started in with the same passive-aggressive speech about my unit drawing significantly more power than recommended, and how I needed to be a responsible community member. I'd smiled politely and told her, once again, that my electric bill was mine to handle. Her smile had frozen into something cold and tight, and she'd muttered something about selfish residents who don't care about the greater good. I brushed it off at the time. I wish I'd taken it more seriously. Now, standing in my powerless home with the temperature climbing past 95 degrees, I began to piece things together. Emma was flushed and cranky, rubbing at her eyes and complaining that she felt dizzy. I knew heat exhaustion was no joke, especially for kids. I grabbed her hand and we headed next door to Mrs. Henderson's place. She welcomed us in immediately, her cool living room a blessed refuge. Emma gulped down a glass of ice water, her face slowly regaining some color. I tried to explain what was happening, my words tumbling over each other in confusion and anger. Mrs. Henderson's brow furrowed as I spoke. "That's very strange, dear," she murmured, refilling Emma's glass. "Did you talk to the HOA maintenance crew? They were working around your block last night. I saw their truck parked near your electrical meter around dinner time, and Karen was with them." A chill ran down my spine. Working on what? I thanked Mrs. Henderson and called the power company again, this time determined to talk to a human being. After what felt like a lifetime on hold, I finally reached a representative who confirmed that everything was fine on their end. No outages. No service interruptions. But then her tone shifted. "Sir, according to our records, your service was disconnected yesterday at 7:32 p.m. by a third-party contractor. The request came from your community's management company. My hands shook as I ended the call. I called Karen. She picked up on the second ring, her voice dripping with faux concern. "Oh, hello there," she purred, the smirk practically audible. "Having some electrical issues today?" I took a deep breath. "Karen, did you have my power shut off?" Her sigh was the kind you'd expect from a kindergarten teacher scolding a misbehaving child. "Well, I did warn you about excessive usage during peak demand periods," she replied. "The HOA has emergency authority to take necessary steps to protect community infrastructure. It's all in Section 12-4 of the guidelines. You cut my power in the middle of a heat wave, with a child in the house?" My voice trembled with fury. "Perhaps this will help you understand the importance of conservation," she snapped. "Your usage was 30% above the community average last month. That's simply unacceptable." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "Karen, it's over 100 degrees today." "My daughter, then maybe you should have thought of that before ignoring my requests," she spat. "Your power will be restored once you sign an agreement to limit your usage." She hung up. I stood there in shock. She'd done it. She'd actually shut off my electricity. I called 911. The operator took my report seriously, especially when I mentioned the heat emergency and Emma's age. They promised to send an officer as soon as possible. Next, I called Channel 7 News, who'd been running HOA horror stories all summer. Jessica Martinez answered, and I poured out the whole story. "Mr. Thompson," she asked, her voice incredulous, "are you telling me your HOA president disconnected your electricity during a heat emergency without notice?" "That's exactly what I'm telling you," I said. "And I think I'm not the first." By noon, Officer Rodriguez showed up at my door. Young, eager, and determined. He took notes and listened intently. While we talked, Mrs. Henderson hurried over with more intel. She'd been asking around. Turns out the Williams family 3 streets over had their water shut off last month. Karen called it excessive lawn watering. And the Patels had their cable cut because Karen thought their satellite dish was unsightly. Officer Rodriguez's eyes narrowed. "Do you have contact info for them?" Within an hour, Jessica Martinez and her camera crew arrived. She interviewed me in Mrs. Henderson's living room, since my own house was pushing 98 degrees. "This is a clear abuse of power," she said on air. "Disconnecting utilities without proper notice or due process. That's likely a violation of multiple state laws." The story aired at 5 with the headline, "HOA President Cuts Power During Heat Emergency." My phone blew up with calls from neighbors. One by one they shared their own Karen horror stories. That evening an attorney named David Kim called. "Mr. Thompson," he said, his voice sharp, "what happened to you isn't just a civil matter. That's criminal. Cutting someone's utilities without proper notice is illegal. Doing it during a heat emergency, with a child, could be child endangerment." He offered to represent me pro bono and immediately filed for an emergency injunction to restore my power. He also filed demand letters to Karen and the HOA. The next morning, a knock on the door startled me. Officer Rodriguez was back, but this time he wasn't alone. Detective Sarah Park introduced herself, flashing a badge. "We have a warrant to search HOA maintenance records and interview Karen Mitchell," she said. "The DA's office takes utility shutoffs very seriously, especially when children are involved." My heart soared. We walked to Karen's house together. She answered in a bathrobe, bleary-eyed and flustered. "Karen Mitchell," Detective Park began, "we have a warrant to search HOA records and electronic communications related to utility disconnections." Karen's face drained of color. I was acting within my authority," she stammered. "We'll need to see documentation of that authority," Park said coolly. Inside, what they found was damning. Email threads with a maintenance company discussing problem residents, spreadsheets tracking neighbors' usage with comments like, "Too high, needs correction," and worst of all, a lawyer's email explicitly warning Karen that she had no authority to disconnect utilities. The email was dated 2 weeks before she'd cut my power. Karen had known it was illegal, and she'd done it anyway. Detective Park read aloud from the lawyer's email. Karen's lips trembled. "I was protecting the community's interests," she sputtered. "These people were selfish and wasteful." "Ma'am," Park said, "you're under arrest for unlawful utility disconnection, child endangerment, harassment, and abuse of authority." Karen's face crumpled. As Officer Rodriguez handcuffed her, she screamed, "I'm the HOA president. I was protecting property values." "That's not your job," Rodriguez replied. "You have the right to remain silent." The sight of Karen Mitchell in handcuffs, escorted to the police car, was the talk of Willow Creek Estates. Neighbors came out in droves, some cheering, others simply stunned. My power was restored within 2 hours, the utility company eager to avoid liability. Emma and I finally got to cool off in our own home. 3 days later, attorney Kim called. The DA is moving forward with charges, he said. Karen's facing up to 2 years for child endangerment alone, plus additional charges for harassment and illegal utility interference. And the fines could reach $50,000. But that was only the beginning. The HOA board convened an emergency meeting and voted unanimously to remove her as president. Her employer, some big-shot real estate company, fired her after the arrest made the news. The State Real Estate Commission was investigating her license. Lawsuits started piling up. 5 other families joined Kim's class action suit. The HOA's insurance company refused to cover her, claiming her actions fell outside legitimate HOA business. Karen was staring down a mountain of legal fees and damages. 2 weeks later, Karen stood in court, hands trembling as the judge read her sentence. 18 months supervised probation, 200 hours community service and $25,000 in fines and restitution. She pleaded guilty to reduced charges to avoid jail time, but the damage was done. She looked nothing like the smug HOA tyrant who'd cut my power. She was just a middle-aged woman, broken by her own petty quest for power. The gavel came down. Karen's shoulders sagged in defeat. She whispered, $25,000? As though she couldn't comprehend how her power trip had cost her everything. I held Emma's hand tightly, a wave of relief washing over me. Karen had let her authority go to her head, and now she was paying the price.